Translate the first line of the contract, and I'll tip you 50 grand. Billionaire mocks Waitress. But what she did next will leave you absolutely shocked. In the refined restaurant Le Fleur Savage, nestled in the elegant Upper East Side of Manhattan, Eleanor Ellie Washington was just another shadow moving between marble tables and crystal stemware. At 58, with dark skin etched by time and hands calloused by decades of hard work, she had mastered the art of invisibility. Her crisp white uniform contrasted sharply with the casual elegance of patrons who barely registered her presence as she glided between tables with heavy silver trays. 5 years serving the NYC elite at this establishment had taught Ellie how to move with the discretion of someone who knows they don't belong, except to serve. Before this, she had worked as a steward in luxury hotels, a cleaner in corporate offices, and a door-to-door cosmetic salesperson. Always rebuilding her life, always surviving after her world had collapsed 15 years prior. Tuesday evening had started like any other. The Michelin-starred chef was debuting a new French-Asian fusion menu, drawing the crème de la crème of New York society. The maitre d', Robert, paced nervously among the tables, checking every detail, when his phone vibrated. Upon reading the message, his face instantly paled. "He's coming," he whispered to David Chan, the manager, who immediately straightened his navy blue tie, an automatic tick that surfaced whenever he got nervous. "Vanderlyn is bringing the Aura Global executives." The news spread like static electricity among the staff. Servers hastily checked the polish on the glasses. The sommelier inspected the temperature of the rare vintages reserved for occasions like this for the third time. Ellie watched the commotion silently, recognizing the signs of agitation that accompanied the arrival of the restaurant's most powerful and feared client. Sterling Vanderlyn entered at 8:43 p.m., as if the restaurant itself were an extension of his domain. Tall, in his early 60s but well-preserved, the corners of his eyes marked by lines Botox couldn't quite erase, his graying hair perfectly coiffed. His custom-tailored Italian suit cost more than the used sedan Ellie was still paying installments on. Following him was his entourage, 4 dark-suited American executives and 3 Asian men with sharp, discreet gazes. "Mr. Vanderlyn, what an honor to have you back," Robert exclaimed, bowing with a deference bordering on the exaggerated. "We've prepared your favorite table, and the sommelier has set aside the 1990 Romani Conti you favor." "Excellent," Vanderlyn replied with that smile that never reached his glacial blue eyes. "My friends from Aura Global Investments deserve to experience the best New York City has to offer." Ellie was assigned to that table, as always happened with VIP clientele. David preferred the most seasoned staff, those who knew how to become virtually invisible while providing impeccable service. She approached with pitchers of water and ice, moving silently as she had for decades. While serving appetizers, Ellie observed the group dynamic. Vanderlyn dominated the conversation, gesturing expansively, occasionally touching the shoulder of Zhang Wei, the lead Chinese investor, a reserved man with observant eyes who seemed to be evaluating everything around him. Seated to her father's right, Deborah Vanderlyn, a woman in her early 30s, remained in respectful silence, occasionally translating specific industry terms for the guests. Between the main course and dessert, the tone of the meeting shifted. Vanderlyn opened an elegant Italian leather portfolio and pulled out a set of documents printed on heavy stock paper featuring Mandarin characters. "We are finalizing the biggest real estate deal of the decade," he announced, his voice raised enough that nearby tables could hear. "An $8.6 billion joint venture to transform the New York skyline. It's all here in these contracts." The Chinese executives examined the documents with respectful nods. That's when Vanderlyn's eyes landed on Ellie, who was discreetly clearing empty glasses. His gaze took on that peculiar glint David called the hunter mode, the expression that emerged when he found an opportunity to exert power over someone he deemed inferior. "You there," he called out, pointing directly at Ellie. "Come here." She approached with the same professional posture she had maintained for years, never showing emotion, never letting her feelings show through. "Yes, sir." Vanderlyn held up one of the contracts, his smile widening. "Do you know what this is?" "A document, sir," she replied, keeping her face impassive. The entire table broke into polite laughter. Vanderlyn leaned forward. It's a contract in Mandarin. Do you read Mandarin? The surrounding tables were now paying attention. David, watching from afar, paled. He knew this game. Vanderlyn loved finding entertainment by humiliating staff. Probably not, sir, Ellie responded with dignity. I have an interesting proposal, Vanderlyn announced, raising his voice to ensure more people were listening. If you can translate the first line of this contract, right here, right now, I'll give you a $50,000 tip. The silence was immediate. $50,000. More than Ellie earned in an entire year. Patrons at nearby tables turned completely, no longer disguising their interest in the unfolding spectacle. A young executive at a side table was already discreetly angling his cell phone to record. Zhang Wei looked uncomfortable, staring into his own glass. Deborah Vanderlyn fixed her gaze on the tablecloth, as she always did when her father started his cruel games. Well, Vanderlyn pressed. 50 grand. More money than you've ever seen in your life, I imagine. All for one sentence. He turned the document toward her. This one. Ellie looked at the contract. She felt the weight of 5 years serving tables in silence. Of 15 years hiding who she truly was. Something inside her, that tired dignity of bowing down, finally rose up. She adjusted the reading glasses kept in her apron pocket, examined the document for a few brief seconds, then straightened her posture. The contract establishes the transfer of 47% of O.R.A. Global Investments shares to the Shell Corporation registered in the Cayman Islands under a nominee name, constituting money laundering and tax evasion, she said in clear, fluent English. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she repeated the same sentence in flawless Mandarin, addressing Zhang Wei directly. The silence that followed was absolute. Cutlery froze mid-air. Conversations ceased abruptly. Vanderlyn blinked repeatedly, as if unable to process what he had just heard. What did you say? He stammered, his arrogance momentarily dissolved by shock. The first line, as you requested, sir, Ellie replied, calmly returning the document. I can translate the rest if you wish. Zhang Wei's eyes widened, shifting between Ellie and Vanderlyn. The other Asian executives began whispering among themselves. At least 20 smartphones were now openly recording the scene. Vanderlyn tried to regain control with a forced chuckle. You got lucky. You must have memorized some Mandarin phrase to impress clients. Ellie looked directly at Zhang Wei and continued in perfect Mandarin. The following clauses detail how the operation conceals the real beneficiary through 3 layers of corporate structures in tax havens. You should pay particular attention to Section 4.7, which commits Aura Global's assets far beyond what is publicly declared. The investor's face turned into a mask of alarm. One of the American executives was already stepping away, frantically dialing his cell phone. You don't know what you're doing? Vanderlyn hissed, lowering his voice so only the table could hear, his face now a mask of contained fury. These contracts are confidential. Ellie maintained the serenity of someone who, after decades, had finally found her voice. I know exactly what I am doing, sir, and I believe you owe me $50,000. David materialized instantly beside her, visibly trembling. Ellie, get back to the kitchen immediately. But it was too late. Dozens of phones were filming the moment. Vanderlyn stood up abruptly, knocking his chair over. Meeting adjourned. We need to review a few details before proceeding, he told the Chinese executives, who were now looking at him with evident suspicion. As the entourage hastily retreated, Ellie remained motionless, as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Patrons at nearby tables applauded discreetly. Others whispered, trying to piece together what they had just witnessed. Passing her, Vanderlyn paused briefly. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, he whispered coldly. No one humiliates me like that and gets away with it. She met his gaze without flinching. I've lost everything once before, sir. I have nothing left you can take from me. That very night, the video reached 1 million views. Within hours, it would be 5 million. The next morning, all of New York City would know Eleanor Washington's name, no longer as the invisible waitress, but as the woman who stood up to one of the most powerful men in America and won the first round of a battle that was just beginning. And if you've ever suffered humiliation at work or been treated as invisible by people who think they're superior, leave your support for Ellie in the comments. Type, "Dignity is priceless," to show we stand together against all forms of abuse. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss the continuation of this inspiring story. Now, let's find out what happened after Ellie stunned the billionaire with her knowledge. The next morning, Ellie's cell phone, a simple model she had used for years, wouldn't stop ringing. It was 6:12 a.m. when she awoke in her small studio apartment in Astoria, Queens, a modest but impeccably organized space. On the walls, interspersed among the few pieces of furniture, were framed photographs from a past few people knew. Ellie receiving a translation award, Ellie next to diplomats at international conferences, a young and confident Ellie beside her late husband, Gerald, holding their young son, Marcus, in his arms. The first call she answered was from Marcus, now 32, a history teacher at a public high school in the outer boroughs. "Mom, are you okay? I'm seeing your face everywhere." His voice mixed concern with barely contained pride. "I'm fine, honey. It was an impulse. I didn't think about the consequences." "Mom, the video has 17 million views. You're trending globally." Ellie sat on the edge of the bed, trying to absorb the scale of what had happened. She turned on the small television and saw her face on the morning news shows. Polyglot waitress humiliates billionaire. The translator of the Upper East Side. Who is the mysterious Eleanor? The headlines varied, but they all showed the same video, looped repeatedly, freezing at the exact moment Vanderlyn's face shifted from arrogance to shock. At 8:47 a.m., the phone rang again. It was David, the restaurant manager. "Ellie, I'm so sorry, but I have to let you go," he said, his voice trembling. "Vanderlyn called the owner personally. He threatened to sue the restaurant and destroy our reputation if you keep working here. You understand, right? We're a business. We depend on these clients." Ellie closed her eyes. She had expected this. "I understand, David. Thank you for the opportunity these past years. Your severance package will be ready by the end of today. And, Ellie, what you said in Mandarin, was it true? About money laundering?" "Every word," she replied simply before hanging up. 3 hours later, when she finally managed to have her coffee and organize her thoughts, the phone rang again. It was David once more. "Ellie, you won't believe this. We have a line of 60 people outside. Everyone wants to meet the polyglot waitress. The owner asks if you can come back. We'll triple your salary." She smiled, feeling a dignity she hadn't experienced in a long time. "I appreciate that, David, but I think I need to follow a different path now." The first few weeks were a media storm. Talk shows called incessantly. Journalists knocked on the door of the modest building where she lived. Universities offered lectures on her experience as a translator. Ellie turned down almost everything, except an interview for an independent podcast hosted by young people. From the outer boroughs. There, she partially shared her story, how she had been a specialized legal translator for international contracts and a conference interpreter at the UN. "What happened? Why did you stop?" asked the young interviewer, Taina Oliver. "A long story," Ellie replied with a melancholy smile. "Maybe another time." What she didn't share publicly were the black cars that now regularly parked in front of her building. About the anonymous notes left in her mailbox. "Keep quiet if you want to keep a roof over your head." About the email she received containing documents she had translated 15 years ago, along with the threatening message, "We know everything. Remember what happened last time." Meanwhile, Sterling Vanderlyn mobilized his private army. His first move was instructing his lawyers, the country's largest corporate firm, to file for an injunction to remove all videos of the confrontation, citing invasion of privacy and defamation. It was denied. The incident occurred in a public place with no expectation of privacy. His second strategy was more subtle and more destructive. Old contracts translated by Ellie began mysteriously reappearing in the press, now with supposed inconsistencies. A business journal ran a story questioning the accuracy of Ellie's translations in previous cases. An anonymous witness claimed she used to invent passages in documents to favor certain clients. "Your career was destroyed for a reason," read a source close to Vanderlyn, quoted in the report. She was known for inserting words that didn't exist in the original documents. Ellie watched the methodical destruction of her reputation, again, with a silent pain that only Marcus witnessed. "Mom, you need to defend yourself. Tell the whole truth," he insisted one night as they ate dinner at their small kitchen table. "The whole truth would implicate many powerful people, son. And not just Vanderlyn," she replied, serving more rice. "Besides, who would believe it? He's a billionaire. I'm an unemployed former waitress with no active credentials." That's when the doorbell rang. In the dimly lit hallway of the building, a 62-year-old black woman waited, holding a bulky portfolio. She introduced herself as Luisa Mendez, an investigative journalist specializing in white-collar crime. "Ms. Washington, I need to show you something that could change your life," she said, with the urgency of someone carrying a valuable secret. At the kitchen table, after Marcus carefully verified the visitor's credentials, Luisa opened her portfolio and spread out documents, old newspaper clippings, and photographs yellowed at the edges. 15 years ago, you were working as a legal translator in an international case involving money laundering through offshore companies. Correct?" Ellie paled visibly. "How do you know that?" "It's my job to know, and because I've been investigating Sterling Vanderlyn for 9 years. With the practiced hands of someone who has handled classified documents for decades." Luisa organized the papers chronologically. "In 2008, you were hired to translate confidential documents in an international prosecutor's case against shell companies in the Virgin Islands. The main suspect, though not directly named in public documents, was a rising real estate magnate, Sterling Vanderlyn." Ellie sat down, her legs suddenly weak. "How did you get all this information?" Ellie asked, her voice almost a whisper. Luisa slid a photocopy across the table. "This is the record of the anonymous complaint that destroyed your career. And this," she placed another document beside it, "is the registration of the law firm that manufactured the complaint. A firm which, tracing the corporate chain, belonged to a subsidiary controlled by Vanderlyn." Ellie touched the papers as if they were precious relics of a former life. "He deliberately destroyed me. You weren't a random victim. You were a strategic elimination of a dangerous witness. Vanderlyn built his empire on dirty money, and your translations threatened to expose everything." Marcus, who had been watching silently, finally spoke. "Did Dad know about this?" "Your father fought until the end to prove my innocence," Ellie replied, her eyes welling up. "Gerald spent all our savings on lawyers, lost his university position from pushing too hard, and got sick from the stress. The cancer came later, but I'm sure it started there in those years of fighting. And now you have a chance for revenge," Luisa said determinedly. "I have contacts at independent outlets. We can tell the whole story." Ellie hesitated. "Vanderlyn has infinite resources. Lawyers, bought politicians, judges indebted to him. And we have the truth," Luisa countered. "And now we also have public attention thanks to your video." In the following weeks, Ellie returned to an almost forgotten ritual, organizing her own evidence, boxes stored for years in the back of an old closet, copies she had kept as a matter of survival instinct after her world crumbled, original translations with official stamps, notes on irregularities she had observed, even old audio recordings of meetings. Each document was a piece of a puzzle she never imagined completing. The big question remained: where to present this proof? Who would give credibility to the word of a discredited former translator against one of the most powerful and well-connected men in the country? The answer came from where Ellie least expected it. It was Saturday, for 17 p.m., when a polite knock sounded at the door. Marcus answered with the caution that recent threats had made necessary. On the threshold stood a young woman, elegant in a discreet gray pantsuit, carrying a genuine leather executive briefcase. "Deborah Vanderlyn," she introduced herself, with the formality of someone unaccustomed to asking permission to enter. I urgently need to speak with Ms. Washington. The silence in the small living room was palpable when Ellie consented to let her in. Deborah sat on the edge of the sofa, her back straight as if she had learned early on never to fully relax. I was at the restaurant that night, she began, carefully opening an ultra-thin laptop. I saw what my father did. I saw what you did. And later, I watched the video dozens of times, trying to understand why I felt relieved to see someone finally stand up to him. Her perfectly manicured hands trembled slightly as she typed a password. I've lived my entire life in his shadow. I studied international law because he demanded it. I work in the legal department of his companies because I never had a real choice. And for years, I ignored what I saw in the documents that crossed my desk. Ellie watched the young woman cautiously, but also with a deep understanding of the burden she carried. After that night at the restaurant, something changed in me. Maybe it was your courage. Or maybe I simply got tired of hating myself every time I look in the mirror. She turned the laptop screen toward Ellie and Marcus. I have access to the company's digital documentation vaults. I know about the 2008 case. I know what he did to you, and I have proof that he's still doing the same things on a much larger scale. Marcus crossed his arms defensively. Why should we trust you? This could be an elaborate trap. Deborah held his gaze without hesitation. Because I spent 33 years trying to earn the approval of a man who only knows how to love his own power. Because I'm tired of being a silent accomplice. And because, her voice faltered momentarily, he is destroying everything around you, including myself. She removed a flash drive from her purse and placed it on the coffee table. Here is all the internal communication regarding the campaign to destroy you again. And also, she took a deep breath. How my father tried to bribe employees at the Justice Department and the NYPD to shelve this investigation. Ellie took the flash drive, feeling its symbolic weight in the palm of her hand. Deborah, do you understand the consequences of what you are doing? Your father will never forgive this. The young woman smiled sadly. He never forgave me for not being the son he always wanted. This is just one more item on the list. That same night, while they analyzed the documents provided by Deborah, Ellie's phone rang. It was an international number, Switzerland. A man with a European accent introduced himself as the director of Helvetica Translations, a prestigious Geneva firm. Ms. Washington, we have followed your case with interest. Your prior reputation as a legal translator was extraordinary, and we believe you deserve a second chance. We would like to offer you a position at our Latin American subsidiary. With a starting salary of €42,000 per year, Ellie almost dropped the phone. It was more money than she had ever dreamed of earning again. We have just one small contractual requirement, the soft voice continued. A permanent confidentiality clause regarding any prior work related to Brazilian clients. Specifically, any documents or information concerning the real estate sector. We believe this will be beneficial for a clean restart, free of past complications. The proposal was crystal clear in its subtext. It was a sophisticated bribe. Financial security in exchange for eternal silence. Ellie thanked him politely and promised to respond within 72 hours. For 3 nights, she barely slept, torn by the agonizing dilemma. 58 years old, a life rebuilt with difficulty, now a chance for real comfort. Marcus would support any decision, but she saw in his eyes the hope that his mother could finally live with financial dignity. On the 3rd night, rummaging through an old box looking for her original diplomas, Ellie found an envelope yellowed by time. Inside was a letter from her mother, Esther, who had passed away 11 years ago. It had been written when Ellie was still a UN interpreter, shortly before the scandal that would destroy her career. My daughter, yesterday I saw you on television translating that important speech, and I cried with pride. I remember what your father always said before he left. Our voice is our greatest asset. Never sell it cheaply, even when the world offers a lot for your silence. Always remember, dignity is priceless. The next morning, Ellie rejected the Swiss offer. A few hours later, accompanied by Luisa Mendez and armed with the documentation provided by Deborah, She drove to the headquarters of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, field office. What followed was a lesson in how power truly operates in the shadows. Her case was received, filed, and then nothing happened. Days turned into weeks. Calls were not returned. The assigned agent took unexpected medical leave. The replacement couldn't locate the files. When the investigation finally seemed to move forward, it was redirected to another, more appropriate department. Then, silently archived due to insufficient evidentiary elements. That's how the system works, Louisa explained as they grabbed coffee at a diner near the FBI office. Vanderlyn doesn't need to bribe directly, that would be vulgar. He finances political campaigns, holds stakes in funds that manage public servant pensions, donates to strategic institutions. It's an invisible web of influence. So, it's over? Ellie asked bitterly. He wins again? Who said? Louisa smiled, holding up her smartphone. While we were banging on closed official doors, I did what I do best. I started publishing the story. First, smaller articles on independent sites. Then, more detailed reports in alternative media. The mainstream press still fears retaliation, but the internet has no single owner. It was true. The hashtag Justice for Ellie had spontaneously emerged after Louisa's first article. Soon after, when digital activists began connecting the dots between the viral video and Vanderlyn's murky history, hashtag Power to the Invisible was born, which quickly reached national trending topics. Young lawyers offered free legal aid. Former colleagues of Ellie from her UN days publicly expressed solidarity. A collective of independent translators launched a petition demanding a review of her 15-year-old professional case. Vanderlyn responded as expected, with brute force disguised as legality. His lawyers filed slander and defamation lawsuits against Ellie, Louisa, and any outlet mentioning the case. They demanded multi-million-dollar damages. But every legal action only intensified public curiosity. Why would a billionaire be so desperate to silence a former waitress? The answer came through an unexpected movement. Eva Burke, a 67-year-old influencer specializing in senior rights and social issues, with over 3 million followers, shared the original video with a detailed analysis of Vanderlyn's body language. Observe the exact moment absolute power meets its limit. The knowledge he couldn't buy or intimidate, she narrated. Eva's video immediately went viral among an older demographic that rarely engaged in digital controversy. 2 months after the restaurant incident, social media pressure finally produced concrete results. A prosecutor from the U.S. Attorney's Office, USAO, attorney Helena Vasconcelos, announced she would personally take over the case after watching a special report on a Sunday program that presented part of the evidence compiled by Louisa. The attorney's office has a constitutional obligation to investigate when there are consistent indications of systematic financial crimes, regardless of the suspect's economic power, she stated in a press conference. No citizen is above the law, not even those who consider themselves protected by their resources or influence. A week later, the inevitable happened. The USAO summoned Ellie Washington for a public hearing to testify as an expert witness regarding suspected international financial fraud, money laundering, and tax evasion. The night before the hearing, Ellie received one last attempt at silencing her. It was the Swiss firm again, now tripling the salary offer and adding extraordinary benefits. A company apartment in a prime neighborhood, lifetime health insurance that included Marcus, and a private pension fund with a substantial initial contribution. The only condition, that she fly to Zurich that very night before the scheduled hearing. Ellie hung up without responding and continued preparing her portfolio with the original documents she would present the next day. She carefully chose her clothes, no longer the waitress uniform that made her invisible, nor the simple attire of someone needing to hide. She would wear the navy blue suit Gerald had given her for their last birthday together, before cancer took him. When Marcus arrived for dinner to help her with the final preparations, he found his mother looking at an old photograph in a simple frame. A young, smiling Ellie and Gerald, she holding a translation award, he with his arm proudly around her shoulders. "Dad would be so proud, Mom," Marcus said, hugging her tenderly. "Tomorrow is not about pride or revenge. she replied, adjusting her glasses. It's about truth. Finally, that night, as New York City fell asleep under a fine drizzle, two completely different worlds prepared for a head-on collision. That of wealth that believed itself untouchable, and that of dignity that refused to remain silenced. The stage would be the courtroom of the U.S. Attorney's Office, and the entire nation would watch the confrontation. Incredible courage from Ellie, wasn't it? If you believe that the truth always finds its way, no matter how long it takes, type "truth never expires" in the comments. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to immediately receive the conclusion of this story of justice and redemption. And now, let's find out if Ellie can finally prove her innocence and face the powerful Sterling Vanderlyn. The U.S. Attorney's Office headquarters in Manhattan awoke, surrounded by a crowd stretching 2 city blocks. Reporters from across the country, activists with colorful signs, and ordinary citizens who simply wanted to witness the historic moment formed a restless mass under the gray Wednesday sky. At 8:23 a.m., an entourage of 3 armored cars pulled up near the entrance. Sterling Vanderlyn stepped out of the central vehicle, escorted by 6 lawyers in immaculate suits. His face, usually the perfect mask of confidence, showed subtle tension around the mouth. The crowd immediately reacted with boos and chants of, "Pay the 50 grand," an ironic reference to the tip never delivered. "Mr. Vanderlyn, are you concerned about the accusations?" shouted a reporter, pushing her microphone forward. He rehearsed his characteristic smile. "I am here only to clarify a misunderstanding. I respect our institutions and have full confidence in the American justice system." The group advanced quickly into the building, ignoring further questions. 15 minutes later, an ordinary car stopped. Marcus stepped out first, circling the vehicle to help his mother. When Eleanor Washington emerged, there was a moment of collective silence, followed by a wave of spontaneous applause. She was no longer the invisible waitress of the Upper East Side, but a woman standing tall with a determined gaze, wearing a navy blue suit that exuded dignity. Her graying hair was down, framing a face that bore the marks of a difficult life, but also of unwavering resolution. "Ms. Washington, how do you feel facing one of the most powerful men in the country?" asked a young reporter, thrusting his microphone toward her. "I am not facing a man," she replied, her voice clear and firm. "I am facing a system that allows some to consider themselves above the laws that govern us all. And I am not alone in this fight." The hearing room was completely packed. In the front rows were USAO aides and accredited press. Behind them, ordinary citizens who had arrived before dawn to secure seats. The large U-shaped table accommodated Prosecutor Helena Vasconcelos in the center, flanked by 4 other prosecutors. At the right end sat Vanderlyn and his lawyers, the most expensive legal team in the country. At the left end sat Ellie with Luisa Mendez and a young volunteer attorney from the public defender's office. The contrast was visible and symbolic. On one side, economic power in its most concrete form. On the other, the dignity of someone who had nothing left to lose but her own truth. At precisely 9:30 a.m., Attorney Helena Vasconcelos opened the session. At 54, with a career built on confronting the powerful, she was known as much for her sharp intellect as for her unassailable integrity. This public hearing aims to collect information and testimony regarding possible financial crimes involving international transactions by the Vanderlyn Group. I clarify that, at this moment, this is a preliminary investigation, not a formal proceeding. She adjusted her red-framed glasses and looked directly at Vanderlyn. "Mr. Sterling Vanderlyn, you are not formally accused at this time, but you have been invited to clarify matters of public interest." The lead attorney for the Billionaire, Mr. Paul Bennett, immediately intervened. "Your Honor, my client appears voluntarily out of respect for the institutions, but we formally register our protest against the nature of this hearing, clearly motivated by a defamatory campaign on social media, orchestrated against one of this country's largest employers and philanthropists." The prosecutor nodded briefly. "Your protest is registered. Let's get to the facts." The following hours turned into a masterclass on the anatomy of complex financial crimes. Ellie was called as the first witness. When she sat in the central chair, She felt the weight of 15 years of forced silence gradually fading away. "Ms. Washington, please state your professional background and experience," requested the prosecutor. Ellie straightened her back. "I hold a BA in literature from Columbia University, with a master's in legal translation from the Sorbonne. I was a sworn translator in 7 languages, including Mandarin, Russian, and Arabic, specializing in international commercial law. I worked as an interpreter at UN conferences for 11 years and translated over 300 international contracts for both American and foreign companies." Vanderlyn shifted visibly in his seat. One of his lawyers leaned over, whispering something in his ear. "Could you explain your involvement in the translation of documents related to the case known as Offshore Connection in 2008? The prosecutor continued. For the next 2 hours, Ellie detailed with impressive technical precision how she had been hired to translate confidential documents related to an international investigation into money laundering. Without naming names initially, she explained the complex structures of offshore companies she identified, the suspicious transactions between different jurisdictions, and the inconsistencies she noted. "At a certain point," she recounted, "I realized the transactions formed a circular pattern. Money left the U.S. for companies in the Virgin Islands, which invested in holdings in Luxembourg, which in turn financed real estate projects in the U.S., always with inexplicably high profit margins and always benefiting the same final investors, hidden behind layers of shell companies." The hearing was hypnotized by the clarity of her explanations. Ellie was no longer the waitress who had served tables for 5 years. She was an expert who completely dominated her field of knowledge. "And did you manage to identify who the final beneficiaries of this scheme were?" asked the prosecutor. Ellie looked directly at Vanderlyn for the first time. "Yes, the main beneficiary was Mr. Sterling Vanderlyn, who was then building his first major development in New York with capital of unproven origin." Mr. Paul Bennett shot up instantly. "I vehemently object. This is a grave accusation without any documentary support." "I have the original documents and my sworn translations," Ellie replied calmly, opening her portfolio, "including technical notes on the inconsistencies I found and reported to the competent authorities at the time." A tense silence filled the room as the documents were handed to the prosecutors, who examined them with growing attention. "Mr. Vanderlyn, do you recognize these documents?" asked Attorney Vasconcelos after a few minutes. The billionaire maintained an impassive expression, but a slight pulse in his temple betrayed him. "I cannot confirm the authenticity of documents I am seeing for the first time right now." That's when the hearing's big surprise occurred. The side door opened, and Deborah Vanderlyn entered the room. Dressed in a gray business suit and carrying a laptop and a portfolio, her presence caused an immediate stir. Vanderlyn paled visibly. "I request permission to testify," she said, her voice firm despite her pale face. "Deborah, what do you think you are doing?" Vanderlyn hissed, loud enough to be heard in the front rows. The prosecutor, recovering from the surprise, nodded. "Are you?" Deborah Vanderlyn, daughter of Sterling Vanderlyn and Deputy General Counsel for the Vanderlyn Group for the past 6 years. For the next hour, Deborah presented internal documents that not only confirmed the accusations related to 2008, but demonstrated that the scheme had expanded and become more sophisticated in the following years. She explained how her father had personally ordered the campaign to destroy Ellie's reputation when he realized the risk her precise translations posed. "He always boasted about it in private meetings," Deborah revealed, avoiding eye contact with her father. How he had neutralized a threat with a simple phone call. How easy it was to destroy insignificant people who dared cross his path. Deborah's voice faltered momentarily, but she visibly pulled herself together. "I have emails here, internal memos, and recordings of meetings from the last 6 months demonstrating how the smear campaign against Ms. Washington was reactivated after the incident at the restaurant. And also," she took a deep breath, "how my father attempted to bribe employees at the Justice Department and the NYPD to shelve this investigation." The revelation caused an uproar in the room. Attorney Vasconcelos had to bang her gavel several times to restore order. Vanderlyn finally lost his composure. He stood up abruptly, his face twisted into a mask of fury. "This is treason," My own daughter. After everything I did for you, you would be nothing without me. Control yourself immediately, the prosecutor warned sternly, or you will be removed from the room. Over the next few hours, a mountain of evidence was presented, analyzed, and officially recorded. Ellie translated documents in Mandarin, Arabic, and Russian in real time, explaining complex technical clauses, dissecting the sophisticated international network Vanderlyn had meticulously built over 2 decades. The hearing, initially scheduled for 3 hours, stretched for more than 8. Outside, the crowd grew, following along on screens hastily set up in the plaza. On social media, the hashtag #JusticeFO RLE reached the top global trending topic, not just national. At 6:42 p.m., attorney Helena Vasconcelos made her final statement. Based on the substantial evidence presented today, the U.S. Attorney's Office orders the immediate freezing of bank accounts and assets belonging to Mr. Sterling Vanderlyn and his companies on U.S. territory, up to the amount of $4.7 billion. I also request a waiver of banking, tax, and electronic secrecy for the investigated party and his direct associates. A formal inquiry will be opened to investigate crimes of money laundering, tax evasion, false declaration, obstruction of justice, and racketeering. She adjusted her glasses and addressed Ellie directly. Ms. Washington, the USAO also formally requests a review of your professional case with the competent bodies, considering strong indications that you were the victim of malicious prosecution and systematic persecution. When the session concluded, Ellie remained seated for a few moments, overwhelmed by the emotion she could finally express. 15 years of silent struggle culminated in that moment of public recognition. Marcus approached and hugged his mother. Both had tears in their eyes. On the other side of the room, Vanderlyn was escorted out by security detail while his lawyers frantically tried to negotiate the terms of the asset freeze. Deborah watched from a distance, her face a complex mix of emotional exhaustion and deep relief. In the lobby of the USAO, dozens of reporters waited. Ellie, normally reserved, felt she needed to speak. She approached the microphones, with Marcus and Louisa firmly by her side. Today we do not celebrate a personal victory, she said, her voice emotional but firm. We celebrate a victory for all the invisible people of this country, for every person who was silenced, humiliated, or discarded by a system that values power and money over human dignity. 15 years ago, I lost my voice. Today, I have recovered it, and I hope my story inspires others to find their own voices. The cameras broadcast her testimony live across the country. From the outer boroughs of New York to the rural plains of the Midwest, American citizens watched, many with tears in their eyes, the story of the waitress who stood up to one of the most powerful men in the nation and prevailed. 6 months passed since that historic hearing. The lawsuit followed its course with the characteristic slowness of the American judicial system. But the transformation in Ellie's life was immediate and profound. On a sunny Thursday morning, Eleanor Washington walked into a lecture hall at Columbia University's School of Arts and Sciences not as a student, but as a professor. She had accepted the invitation to teach international legal translation in a special program designed to train new translators. Her inaugural class was packed. Students from all over the country had enrolled specifically to learn from her. Translation isn't just about words, she explained to the attentive class while writing on the board. It's about power. Whoever controls the language controls the narrative. And whoever controls the narrative almost always controls the final outcome. Among her students, more than half came from peripheral communities, the result of a program Ellie helped create, offering full scholarships to talented, low-income youth. The international legal translation market has historically been exclusionary, she explained in an interview with an educational magazine. I want to change that. I want young people of all backgrounds and colors to have access to this powerful tool. In her spare time, Ellie dedicated herself to the Invisible Voices NGO, founded by her with part of the compensation she received after the review of her professional case. The organization offered free legal advice and language classes to vulnerable workers. Sterling Vanderlyn was now facing 11 different lawsuits, criminal, civil, and administrative. His empire was gradually crumbling, with judicial freezes, exorbitant fines, and compliance agreements consuming approximately 70% of his fortune. The press, previously intimidated by his economic power, now relentlessly investigated every aspect of his past business dealings. Ironically, it was Deborah Vanderlyn who emerged from the ashes of her father's empire with something positive. After definitively breaking ties with her father, she took control of one of the remaining companies, following a complete audit and compliance agreement with the USAO. Under her direction, the company implemented rigorous compliance and transparency policies, becoming an example in the real estate market. On a Friday afternoon, at a coffee shop near the university, Ellie received an unexpected visitor. David, the ex-manager of Le Fleur Savage, now unemployed following the restaurant's closure, an indirect consequence of the scandal and negative exposure. "I never imagined that night would change so many lives," he confessed, nervously stirring his coffee. "Including mine." Ellie smiled kindly. "David, 15 years ago, I thought my life was over when I lost my job and my reputation. Today, I know that life never ends as long as we keep our dignity intact." He hesitated, then asked what many were still wondering. "That night at the restaurant? Did you plan all of it? Did you know he would be there with the Mandarin contract?" Ellie laughed softly. "The universe sometimes creates perfect coincidences. I was just prepared when the opportunity arose." Perhaps the most significant moment of those 6 months occurred when a young black waitress approached Ellie after a lecture on workplace dignity. Juliana Pereira was 26, worked at a luxury hotel on Park Avenue, and dreamed of becoming a lawyer. "You changed my life," she said, her eyes shining with determination. "Seeing your testimony at the Justice Department made me realize that invisibility is what they impose on us, not who we are. I went back to studying the following month." Ellie hugged the young woman, recognizing in her the same silent resilience that had sustained her for so many years. A week later, she helped secure a full scholarship for Juliana at a private university law school. On a golden Sunday afternoon, Ellie sat in the small garden of her new home, a modest but comfortable apartment in the Morningside Heights neighborhood near Columbia. Marcus had brought over his newborn grandson, Gerald, named in honor of the grandfather he would never know. As she gently rocked the sleeping baby in her arms, Ellie reflected on the extraordinary journey her life had taken. The $50,000 tip mockingly offered that night at the restaurant was never paid, obviously, but it had become completely irrelevant compared to what she had achieved. Her restored dignity, her recovered voice, her ability to inspire others to confront injustice. Watching her grandson sleep peacefully, Ellie finally understood the profound truth her mother had tried to teach her in that letter. Dignity cannot be bought, sold, or bent under pressure. It merely waits patiently for the right moment to rise up and make the world see. As she often told her students, some translations are never just about words, they are about rewriting entire histories. Eleanor Washington had rewritten hers, and in doing so, she had helped initiate the rewriting of the story for so many other invisible people who were now finding the courage to raise their own voices. Life had taught her that the powerful, like Vanderlyn, believe that everything and everyone has a price, an amount for which someone will sell their integrity, their silence, their dignity. $50,000 was his bet. But what he never understood, and perhaps never will even in his fall, is that there are people for whom dignity will never be for sale, no matter the offering price. And you? Have you ever felt your voice silenced? Have you experienced the feeling of being invisible in a world that only values power and money? Ellie's story reminds us that it is never too late to reclaim our dignity and make our voices heard. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to receive more inspiring content that shows the triumph of dignity over arrogance. Leave your comment with the word dignity, so we can show together that human values always win in the end. And share this with someone who needs to remember that true power lies not in money, but in the courage to be who we truly are. This story, while inspired by real events, is a work of fiction created for entertainment and reflection. Any resemblance to real persons or situations is purely coincidental.